Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I'm gonna put this up on YouTube and Facebook after the morning service. We're having a soft open, I guess you would call it, this morning at Union. We're going to have a short service, and I sent out a text at 10:30. Usually we have our service at 10:40, but we're going to have one this morning. We're going to have a short service, kind of see how things go. Again, trying to keep our social distancing, trying to make sure that we do everything correctly so that everyone stays safe during this coronavirus. And we are going to have a service, and then after that I will get this up on Facebook and YouTube. So welcome. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things now that I'm going to be talking about in that service when we have the service. So please bear with me. But I'm going to talk a little bit about obedience and what that means in the life of a Christian and what it means in the life of an American citizen, what it means in the life of a patriot. So we need to think about those things. Some devotional readings you might look at Genesis 22 verses 13 through 18. I'm gonna read one verse right now from Genesis 22:18. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. God talking to Abram, I believe. But there are other things in the Word, in the book of Deuteronomy, when Moses is talking to the people, and God is talking to Moses. Verse 6, these are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you, to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all these decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. Verse 3, hear, Israel, and be careful to obey, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. And then some other scriptures. Isaiah, to obey is better than sacrifice. In John 14, Jesus says, those who love me will obey my teachings. Jesus' teachings were wrapped up in a couple of things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, with all of your being, basically. And secondly, love your neighbor as yourself. Keep those commandments, Jesus said. And then Acts 5:29, the apostles say we must obey God rather than human beings, human men, human laws. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. But I want to, I want us to be sure that we understand. Excuse me, I'm looking at my Bible here. We need to understand some things definitely that pertain to us. First of all, are we capable? Just a flat out question. Are we capable of unquestioning obedience to anyone? As human beings, can we unquestionably obey anyone? It's not our nature to determine, or is it not our nature to determine our own actions? We need to understand things before we act. But even if we could give unquestioning obedience, which I'm sure we really probably can't do that, but even if we could, would we not be avoiding our basic human responsibilities by surrendering our rights to make individual decisions? Would it be right to obey anyone without question? Should we surrender our minds and consciences to anyone? Parents, Laura and I raised 4 kids, and we've watched our kids with their kids. Parents know that they demand obedience from their children. But one thing we need to understand as parents, we've got to be prepared to give reasons for those commands, not just because I said so. And sadly, that was the way I was raised sometimes myself, was if I said why, And they would say, because I said so. And we need to reason a little bit more, I think. Parents know that on rare occasions it may be their duty to disobey if their superior gives a command that's in violation of national or international law. But what about if we get a command from the government that goes against what God says? We need to think about those things. Only God is loving enough to reach out to us and draw out our response of unconditional love. Only God is good enough and wise enough to merit unquestioning obedience. And we need to remember that. We found it pretty easy, I think, in the last 6 weeks to blindly obey things. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. But we've the government said you need to stay at home, so we stayed home. Government said this is going to help. If we stay home, this is going to help people not get this virus. So we stayed home. Going to lock down your businesses. So guess what? We locked down the businesses. We obeyed. We didn't really ask questions. I've mentioned this before. A long time ago, I saw a movie that was about a missionary to China, or missionary from China, actually. And there was a scene in that movie where, based on fact, that after the churches were shut down and burned down and tore up in China, after the big revolution over there, the Cultural Revolution they called it, there was a scene inside of a burned out church. No roof on this building, just a stone building with no roof. Probably hundreds of worshipers in there. Doors were closed, windows were all closed. And the leader of the group stood up and started singing a hymn. Now the subtitles, it was something like Amazing Grace or something like that. But he wasn't using his voice. They were just mouthing the words. And it was such peace that they had because they were still able to do that. But their government had said no more church. And I started thinking about that this week. I saw a couple of different news reports out of California. Some of the places are opening up in California, but the governor said, we can open up salons, restaurants, gyms, small businesses, all those different kinds of things, but the churches have to stay closed another 4 to 6 weeks. Think about that. I can go to the liquor store if I want to. I don't want to. But I can't go to church. I can go to the gym and work out, but I can't go to church and work out my faith and my spiritual life. But we obey. We blindly obey. And sometimes I wonder about unquestioning obedience. God is the only one, again, who is loving enough and who loves us unconditionally enough. He's the only one that's good enough and wise enough to merit unquestioning obedience. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. To God alone may we properly say, your will be done in my life. To God alone. We need to think about those things. We need to think about what's happening in the world around us. What's really behind these closures, these shutdowns? Is it just the health of the people? If so, that's good. We need to be careful who we blindly follow. We need to be careful whom we blindly obey. Think about that. I love you. Christ loves you. Be at peace with the Lord today and keep the faith.